iHeartMedia presents CEOs You Should Know.
Well, welcome in is our iHeartMedia CEO Spotlight, and today we're talking to Dr. Rod Hochman from Providence St. Joseph Health. And just in that way, I want to get things going and have you explain, Dr. Hochman, exactly what that is, because we were talking before we started this. For so many of us in the Northwest, many of us were born up on Capitol Hill, on what used to be Providence Hospital, and then it evolved into Swedish, and then we hit all these big groups now, and you're telling me we've all come back together. So exactly what is Providence St. Joseph Health?
Sure. Let me just explain what Providence St. Joseph Health is. We are a health system, actually the third largest in the United States, and little do our listeners know that we're based right here in the Puget Sound. 51 hospitals spanning from Lubbock, Texas to Anchorage, Alaska. So we're in Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, Montana, New Mexico, and Texas. We have 120,000 caregivers, employees, we call them caregivers, 120,000 that work for Providence St. Joseph Health. We have over 900 clinics across that same span. We have one of the largest housing divisions in Washington and Oregon for public housing. And we even have a university in Great Falls, Montana, and a high school across from Disney Studios in Burbank. And to top it all off, we have about 1 million members in our health plan in Oregon.
Where does faith and just when we hear Providence and St. Joseph, where does that fit into the equation? And again, I'll just harken back to my days years and years ago. My parents went to Seattle U, and so most of us were born at Providence, and it was because of kind of a faith-based hospital in a sense as well.
So we're a faith-based organization, but we're an amalgamation of every shape and size that you can imagine. So people say, "Oh, you're a Catholic place." Well, I think the Catholic folks are in the minority in our place. It really is a place that's inclusive. So, and actually on the hospital side, we have both Catholic hospitals and hospitals that are other than Catholic. So in Texas, in Lubbock, Texas, there was a Christian hospital that was there that joined the system. And then we've had hospitals like Cadillac out in the Tri-Cities, Swedish in Seattle, Hoag Memorial down in Newport Beach that are also part of our system that are not Catholic hospitals. So we've created a system that is very inclusive of everyone. Now, we started 175 years ago. And when I'm on Wall Street talking to all the investors and they want to know about us, I say, name another organization that's worth $25 billion, that's 175 years old, and was started by a group of women.
I think the answer would be I can't.
Right, yeah. And that's Providence, right? And Providence St. Joseph. It was a group of sisters that came from Montreal, landed in Vancouver, Washington, with absolutely nothing, begged for some money, started some schools, started to build a hospital, and fast forward 175 years later, that's Providence St. Joseph Health.
I want to add a little bit about you, because when you're a medical professional, you get into that profession because much like those sisters who founded Providence and St. Joseph Health way back when, they got into it for probably the reason of you want to help people and you want to make people's lives better, and those that are sick and ill, help them get through some things. Your background is what, and how did you take that and evolve into, and why did you take that step and get into this role, administration and overseeing as a CEO of this huge, huge billion-dollar business? Right.
So I graduated from med school actually 40 years ago, almost to the date. Now I'm going back for my 40th reunion at Boston University back on the East Coast. And trained in medicine, then became a specialist in rheumatology and immunology. And when my first practice, we were in a large multi-specialty group, 250 physicians, the elder statesman said, well, we need a token young guy on the board. And I was the token young guy. So I said, oh, sure, I'll do this. And then I kind of realized that I liked, and I thought I could help more people by making sure we had a stable system. And I was chairman of medicine in Cincinnati, and then we merged hospitals together. And I kind of learned on the job by doing all the jobs, running the hospital, doing all of that. But it's kind of like an engineer. If you look at Satya Nadella at Microsoft, I think they love having an engineer that's now their CEO. And I think for in healthcare, it's awfully nice having a clinician. And as a doctor, I'd say the same thing about a nurse or pharmacist or physical therapist, who's actually touched patients and worked with patients and done all of that to be the leader, because you understand the essence of what we do. And as complicated as we are as a system, it's really simple. We take care of one patient and one family at a time. And for that family and patient, what we do in that instance is probably one of the most important aspects of their life. Giving birth, going through the end stages of life, having surgery, being in an ICU, doing a home visit. So I always say in healthcare, we do 50,000 takeoffs and landings every day that we got to get right, because it's the most important thing to everyone we care for.
I think it's an amazing thought, because in today's world, oftentimes, I know even in our business in media, most of the people that are running, whether it's a cluster of radio stations, and I also work at a TV station, and the person running the television station, they all come from basically a sales background or a marketing background. So they haven't touched a microphone, a camera, or in your case, they haven't visited with a family that's going through a tremendous stress and burden along the way. You also manage, as you said, 119,000 healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, etc. For you, I know as important as the people are that you're treating, how important is it for you to deal with and understand what all of those healthcare professionals go through on a day-to-day basis? And you probably relate to that better than somebody else would.
There are only two things that you do as a CEO of a health system, make it real simple. You have to care for two groups. You have to care for the caregivers, and then you have to care for the people that they're caring for.
Is there a balancing act with that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, there is, but you got to do both, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't take good care of patients and families unless you're taking care of the caregivers. And there's a lot, you've probably read a lot about burnout and, the stress and strain of being a nurse, a doctor, a therapist. But I think at least they know that their leader is someone also who's gone through that themselves. So when they're struggling with a lot of the trials and tribulations of electronic health records and everything else, they know at least their leader understands that and is able to do it. I was just down in Humboldt County, California, at Eureka St. Joseph Medical Center, and I made rounds, with the nurses and doctors there, and I think they appreciate you understand what they're doing, what's important to them, why they need this particular piece of equipment, what difference does it make?
I was going to ask you later on if you miss it, but I think if you're able to still get it feels like you're still able to get hands on that.
Still licensed to practice in Virginia, just in case, right? I always tell my board,
somebody calls in sick, you can make a quick flight out there.
Right, yeah, in general, what I try to do is keep current. And as a rheumatologist, immunologist, I try to keep current on all the literature. So if you walk into the OR and you have the scrubs on, you know what people are doing there. And I think that's really important to folks that you really understand what it is that we do every day, how do we do it, and stay relevant. And it's more than just the numbers. It's about what you do. And I think in every profession, just like in media, it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. You got to really understand what we do every day.
Dr. Rod Hochman is joining me from Providence St. Joseph Health. Let's talk about the company. You have, I think I don't know if it's a challenge or if it's a phrase or if it's just a goal, but health is a human right.
Right.
And in today's world, no matter what business you're in, we're all chasing the same thing: quality healthcare, healthcare insurance and coverage. When I see health as a human right, that jumps out at me. What does that mean to you? Why is that so important?
So I guess if you've noticed, there's been this political discussion about healthcare lately.
Not at all.
We're only in the paper every day, and sometimes we feel like that political football that gets kicked around, depending on what each party's thinking and everything else. So we've taken a stance, and actually, if you go to SeaTac, you'll see an enormous poster, and if you go down the escalator to get your suitcase, they'll say healthcare is a human right. And at the bottom, we'll just say Providence St. Joseph Health. And our point of view is, besides all the politics, we feel that everyone, Americans, but anyone in the world, but let's talk about the United States, every American should have access to healthcare. It's to us, it's a basic right. It's important. Couldn't be more important than anything else. So we don't want to make a big political statement. We just want to make a statement of value. And we think it's important in this era of all this noise out there. let's just say what we believe in, and that's why we've taken that phrase. And in our hearts, we think we take care for everyone that walks through our doors, regardless of their ability to pay. Last year, we did $1.6 billion with a B of free care community service to all the communities that we serve. And at the same time, we're able to stay solvent and relevant and everything else. But we're an asset to the communities we serve, and we kind of believe that we're here to help the health of the communities that we're in.
I know one of the things you're trying to do, transforming healthcare. I've read that you're transforming healthcare under your leadership. Part of it, I think you just explained, the fact that if you're taking $1.3 billion of business and not taking $1.3 billion, that will be a big part of it. How else are you transforming healthcare?
So if you've noticed, healthcare is going through a revolution, right? The other revolution that healthcare is going through is the digital revolution. That media has gone through, retail has gone through, if we've noticed that lately. The last two holdouts to the digital revolution have been higher education and healthcare. And guess what? It's over, right? It's time. And the question is how do we make that change? Mm-hmm. So we've been number one in the country of leading that transformation to the digital innovative side. How did we do it? Well, we sit right here, Puget Sound, and I think some of our hospitals sit between Amazon and Microsoft and everything else. So we said, well, we need to hire some of those people to work for us, to help us make that transformation. So our head of our chief digital officer is from Amazon. Our CFO is from Microsoft. Our chief information officer is from Microsoft. Our chief marketing officer came from T-Mobile. And what they're helping us do is we're trading them medical knowledge for their digital knowledge. And we're kind of seen as a leader around the country in healthcare of creating that digital revolution. And recently, it made the news waves elsewhere around the country that Microsoft and Providence St. Joseph Health have put together a 5-year agreement together, part of which is to create the hospital of the future from a digital standpoint.
What would that look like?
Wow. Do you have another hour?
I mean, you can't throw that out there and not give us a little taste of what that would be.
So what it means, let's go to the present experience. You want to walk in, and everyone knows who you are as you're walking in the door. Mm-hmm. They've got all your records. They've got everything is seamless that's done there. The technology talks to itself. And how many times have we been in a hospital where we've had to tell 5 different nurses and doctors the same story all over again? What happens if that all happened automatically? What happens if you can stay in touch with what's going on? You don't have to ask, well, am I supposed to take that pill now or not? And it comes right to you. So how do we use, it's not that the digital stuff separates us from the human touch. It's just that it could be such a good enhancer to helping us do what we need to be able to do.
Maybe too much human touch at times. As you mentioned that, I think everyone can relate to that. You walk in, even if you're just getting an annual physical, you check in, they ask you all the questions. Then you go get your height and weight taken. They ask you the same questions. Sit down, more questions. And yeah, if you could all just be streamlined.
How would I like to do it? You know how I want to have, and every time I go for my physical, my organization, they cringe because I'm going to come back and say, we're not getting this the right way, because you want to do all of that the night before, the day before, fill it all in. It's all there. I don't want to be asked that. Boy, even if I have a scale at home, it'd awfully be nice not to be embarrassed in front of everyone else getting weighed, as we all, Yes. It would be awfully nice to do all that ahead of time and then be able to spend most of the time one-on-one with my nurse or doctor, really talking about what's important to me in terms of my health and everything else. So that's where we have to get to. And the way I like to describe Providence St. Joseph Health, we want to be at the intersection of innovation and compassion. So innovation, we want to be tech and everything else. But at the core, as an organization, it's got to be about compassionate care and how we do it.
Mental health is a huge topic these days, even in our state with what happened with Tyler Helinski, a quarterback who was well known, and suicide, mental health prevention, depression, things that we didn't even speak of years ago, not even that long ago. I say years ago, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, it was taboo to even go down that road. Mental health, where does that fit into play with what you guys do and what you want to do and accomplish?
So a big deal for us. So when we did the merger with St. Joseph Health, we said instead of having one of those self-congratulatory parties, guess what? Hey, we're bigger. We said we're going to put $130 million into mental health and create the Well-Being Trust. because we got to do something about mental health. So that, for us, is a core issue. And the way we looked at mental health, remember a few decades ago, we never talked about cancer?
Mm-hmm.
And then it took...
It was the big C. You didn't even want to say
big
the word.
C, right?
Didn't want to say
and
the
then
word.
it took a lot of brave women that said, I got breast cancer. I want something done. I want to make this happen. And all of a sudden, everyone could talk about their cancer, and it wasn't taboo. Then we had HIV. And for a long time, oh boy, it was, and now we openly talk about it. And guess what happened? We got better at treating it because we took out the screen and we put it out there. We think mental health is exactly in the same spot where we were with HIV and with cancer before. We're going to take the veil off of it. We're not going to stigmatize it. And we're going to get people the treatment that they need, right? So just the number that we think about a lot is in the United States today, 150,000 patients die of the deaths of despair. And what do we call deaths of despair? That is suicide. That has to do with opioids. It has to do with alcohol addiction. All of those things that are tied into mental health, 150,000 people a year. Veterans, well over 20 to 25 veterans every day commit suicide. If that's not a national emergency, what is? And we look at this and we go, let's get going. I mean, this is, and everyone I talk to about mental health, if you talk to a congressman, you talk to the guy that's cooking your food, can tell you a personal story about a family member, themselves, a friend that's been affected by mental health problems.
Where does homelessness fit into that puzzle?
Well, it's part of the spectrum,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So homelessness, big issue, and we've gotten very actively involved. We do a lot of, just if you go down to Pike Place Market, right above Pike Place Market, we have subsidized housing for people that would be otherwise homeless. We've supported Plymouth Housing, and kind of said, we got to get on this. And we think there are a lot of people who have some real, we do and others. So that's part of the picture. If you look at the homeless population, there's a big subset that have mental health problems. And it's not enough just to give housing. You also have to get treatment. So the two have to go together.
Well, I think that's a big key, right? I mean, because we hear all the time, let's solve the homeless problem, and by building houses or doing that. But as you mentioned, it's part of the puzzle. You're mentioning Wall Street, the elections and politics. Where does Providence and St. Joseph Health, where do you fit into a 2020 election? What kind of, I don't want to say influence, but what type of role would this company play in that?
So a couple of things. So it's obviously important to us. I will be the chair-elect for the American Hospital Association. So I'm going to be right at the vortex of all of this storm going on. I'll be chair-elect in 2020 and the chair in 2021. So we've engaged nationally with both the Catholic Health Association and with the American Hospital Association and have a strong vested interest in what happens not only in Washington, D.C., but in Olympia, Salem, Sacramento, Juneau, Santa Fe, Austin, Texas, all of the state
Federal,
capitals.
state, local.
State and local, right?
Yep.
All that fits together. So what we've taken the approach is we try to stay apolitical, but we're very strong in what our values are. So we believe in everyone has a right to care. We believe in the Medicaid expansion. We are strong on immigration. We think, and we actually sent people to the border to help care for some of the immigrant families that were down in Texas. We're against human trafficking, and so what we've decided to do is take a strong position that's value-based on the things that we believe in, and we don't want to put a D or an R next to it. And then we try to work with the candidates in Washington and all over, both from the right and from the left and from the center, to explain to them what's important in healthcare. And that approach has worked for us, and we have to stay at it. It's an important part of, particularly what I do as the chief executive. I'm
wondering, Dr. Hochman, too, that you mentioned Wall Street a couple times, and the fact that this is a $1 billion business just with your company, and I'm not sure what the healthcare business is total in terms of B with the billions across the country.
More T with the trillions.
The T. where does marketing healthcare come in? I just as I was thinking about having this discussion with you today, whether it's a banner or something at SeaTac Airport or a conversation you're having, I think oftentimes there's decisions that people make as a consumer for everything we do, no matter what grocery store am I going to shop at, what car dealership I'm going to go to, et cetera. What computer am I going to buy? Am I going to go Microsoft or Apple? Where am I going to go? With healthcare, it always kind of feels like in the past it's been where my insurance lets me go. But it's more to it than that. So how do you market healthcare, your company specifically, to get the word out to this is a place that you need to be if you need something taken care of?
Well, marketing's changed dramatically, right? So it used to be throw up a poster, I'd say it even put out a radio ad, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's digital now. So a good part of what we do is in social media. So why did we hire those guys from Amazon and those guys from Microsoft and that guy from T-Mobile? Because they understand when you're looking for a doctor,
mm-hmm.
you go to Mr. Google.
Right.
Mr. Google, help me. I need a cardiologist in Seattle. And then how do you find that? So we're trying to look at the ways people try to find us and try to meet them where they are. So we are spending a lot on our digital media campaign. That's really where we try to meet people where they're looking for us. So we have things like Express Care, where literally I can, if I took my iPhone out, I could do an appointment with a doctor on my iPhone.
Right.
We're discovering that people want care where they are, not where we are necessarily. And they want it when they want it, how they want it. And, a lot of times they want to get it electronically. Mm-hmm. So we have to meet people where they are. So our whole marketing approach now has turned, into a big digital marketing approach. We do some of the conventional stuff, it's out there. I think they do it to make me feel good. So when I'm at SeaTac Airport, oh gosh, I feel really good. But the question is, does it really have an effect on the consumer? The consumer wants the information when they've got an issue, when they've got a problem, and typically it's now online.
I mean, it kind of seems to be the way it goes.
Right.
I mean, even in our business of media, it's traditional media, it's a part of what we do. It's not what we do. It used to be, hey, buy a 30-second commercial on radio or TV, buy a newspaper ad, and that would be it. Yeah. But you can't do that anymore. Exactly. You have to reach more people. And as you mentioned, I think when we started this interview, it's about connecting with people. Connecting with whether it's a family or whether it's your healthcare provider, it's connecting everybody together. So I'll wrap it up with this. How do you continue to connect with the community? What do we need to know about your company and the communities it serve, which, again, go from Texas to Tri-Cities?
Yeah. Well, the issue for us in the Puget Sound, which I kind of smile about, and I've lived here almost 13 years, we're the best kept secret in our own hometown. Everyone knows us all around. I go all around the country, and mm-hmm. people say, "Oh, we want to be like Providence St. Joseph Health." And I was down in California, everywhere else. And I don't think the people in the Puget Sound realize, the organization that's here, and our influence and spread across the Western United States. And so I would say, we got to do a better job of getting that story out. And particularly right where I live, right here in Capitol Hill, and I got to tell my neighbors what I do for a living, and so I think we could do a better job with that, and I think we have a great philosophy in terms and some of the good answers for what we should do to fix healthcare, and I really feel strongly the Northwest and the Western United States is actually way ahead of the rest of the country in fixing healthcare, believe it or not, but if everyone in the country practiced medicine like we do in, let's say, Washington and Oregon, mm-hmm. the big healthcare problem goes away. So we have a lot to talk about in the West. We've done a lot of really creative things. We're a hotbed for technology, and I think we represent that ability to marriage technology to healthcare. Nowhere better than the Northwest, and I'd say in Silicon Valley and up here, but pretty much we're kind of leading the country in that. So I'd love to leave folks with that message and that we're here for you 24/7. And when, there's a natural disaster, and whether it's a shooting, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a tornado, where do people look to for help? They want to look to their local hospital. And we got to be there for you 24/7, and we got to take care of your health.
I think when you're connecting with companies like Microsoft and hiring people from a company like Amazon and connecting with the community in which you began in the state of Washington and moved north, I think it's safe to say that Providence St. Joseph Health is doing all that, and the community is being connected with you. And it's great to meet you. Thank you so much. And I have a feeling we'll need to do this again, because it sounds like, if I learn nothing else, your business is changing by the day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Thank you.